It is 4:37 inches the afternoon and you are in the kitchen. There is flour on the worktop, egg on the floor, and a mixing bowl wobbling precariously near the edge of the counter. Your 2-year-old has dragged a chair across the room and is now standing on it, both hands reaching for the whisk. And before you even form a conscious decision, your mouth opens and the word comes out. No, let Mummy do it. You lift her down. You take the whisk. She screams for 30 seconds, then wanders off to the living room. You finish the cake alone. And somewhere, buried in the chaos of a Tuesday afternoon, a child just learned something about who she is. She learned that she is not a helper. Here is what the developmental science says. That 2-year-old standing on the chair reaching for the whisk was not being naughty. She was not being inconvenient. She was doing something remarkable that human beings have done for tens of thousands of years. She was asking to contribute, and you did not say no to a behavior. You said no to an identity. In 2006, researchers at the Max Planck Institute in Germany published a study that changed the way we understand children. Dr. Felix Warneken and Dr. Tomasello wanted to answer a simple question. Are human beings born selfish, only learning to help because society trains us to be useful? They set up an experiment with children as young as 14 months, pre-verbal toddlers who had barely learned to walk. An adult stranger would enter the room and accidentally drop a clothes peg on the floor, then pretend to struggle to reach it. No one asked the child to help. No one gestured toward the peg. No one offered a reward. The toddlers helped. Across dozens of trials, children as young as 14 months consistently picked up the dropped object and handed it to the stranger. They did this without being asked. They did this without being promised anything. They did this even when they were in the middle of playing with a toy they clearly enjoyed. Warneken and Tomasello ran the same experiment with young chimpanzees, our closest living relatives. The chimpanzees helped too, but only when the task was easy and the reward was visible. The human toddlers helped in every condition. They crossed the room to help a stranger they had never seen before and would never see again. Children are not born selfish. They are born helpful. The drive to contribute is as old as humanity itself. Here is where it gets uncomfortable for most Western parents. 2 years after their first study, Warneken and Tomasello ran a follow-up experiment. This time, they wanted to know what happens when you reward children for helping. They took 20-month-old infants and divided them into 3 groups. In the first group, when a child helped a stranger, the child received a material reward, a small toy. In the second group, the child received only social praise. Thank you, that was very kind. In the third group, the child received nothing at all, no reward, no praise, just the intrinsic satisfaction of having helped another person. Then they watched what happened next. They created more opportunities for the children to help, the same kind of accidental drop situations from the first experiment, and they measured whether the children continued to offer assistance without any prompting. The children who had been rewarded with a toy helped less, significantly less. The children who had never received a reward continued to help at the same high rate. The children who received only praise fell somewhere in between. This phenomenon has a name in psychology. It is called the overjustification effect. When you take something a child does naturally, something driven by intrinsic motivation, and you attach an external reward to it, you crowd out the internal drive. The child stops thinking I help because I am a helper, and starts thinking I help when there is something in it for me. Now consider what this means for the kitchen at 4:37 inches the afternoon. Every time you say no, not today, Mummy is busy, let me do it, you are too little, you will make a mess, you are not just stopping an inconvenient behavior. You are systematically extinguishing the very drive that makes human beings cooperative. You are teaching a child who was born wanting to contribute that their contribution is not wanted, that their help is a problem to be managed rather than a gift to be received. This is the critical part. This is not about chores. This is not about getting your child to sweep the floor or load the dishwasher. This is about identity formation. The way a child answers the most fundamental question of social life. Am I someone who contributes, or am I someone who receives? And in 1982, a developmental psychologist named Harriet Reingold published a landmark study in the journal Child Development. The title was simple: Little Children's Participation in the Work of Adults, a Nascent Prosocial Behavior. Reingold observed children between 18 and 30 months in their homes. She watched them during ordinary days and cataloged every time a child spontaneously attempted to help with adult work: sweeping, dusting, folding laundry, wiping surfaces, putting objects away, setting the table. What she found was extraordinary. The average toddler in her study attempted to help with household tasks approximately once every 4 minutes. They did not need to be asked. They did not need chore charts. They sought out the work and inserted themselves into it. Reingold wrote that helping was an early developing behavior, appearing as soon as children are physically capable of performing the acts. It was, she concluded, a nascent pro-social behavior, a behavior as natural as walking or talking. Now ask yourself a difficult question. What happened to that Che, U0069LD? The Che, U0069LD, who reached for the broom at 18 months, who wanted to stir the batter at 2, who insisted on carrying the shopping bags at 3. Where did that choke, U0069LD, go? Because most of us know the answer. That choke, U0069LD, is not standing in your kitchen at age 9 begging to load the dishwasher. That CHU0069LD is on the sofa watching television while you do it yourself. And we think this is normal. We think children grow out of wanting to help. We say things like kids are lazy or teenagers only care about themselves. Here is what the neuroscience says. They did not grow out of it. We stamped it out. No, let me do it at a time. And this is where the Nordic countries come in, because they noticed something that most Western parenting models missed entirely. In Norway, children as young as 3 are expected to contribute to household life. Not because they are assigned chores. The word chore itself implies a burden, an obligation, but because they are members of the household.
In Norwegian kindergartens, children set the tables for lunch. They sweep the floor after meals. They help hang laundry on the line. They chop vegetables with small, child-safe knives. Not because it is efficient, it is manifestly not efficient. A 3-year-old chopping carrots is a glacial exercise in controlled chaos. They do it because efficiency is not the point. Belonging is the point. This is the shift that most Western parents never make. We think about household tasks as things that need to get done. The Norwegian approach thinks about household tasks as arenas for identity construction. Every time a child helps, the child is not just completing a task. The child is answering the question, who am I in this family? And the answer the child receives, through experience, not through words, is you.
Means are someone who contributes. You are needed. This household would not function as well without you. The research supports this at every level. The Harvard Grant Study, one of the longest-running longitudinal studies in human history, has tracked the lives of hundreds of men and their children for over 80 years. One of its most consistent findings is that children who participated in household tasks from an early age showed significantly better outcomes in adulthood, higher professional achievement, better relationships, greater life satisfaction, and lower rates of mental health problems. But here is the nuance that most parents miss. The Harvard researchers were careful to distinguish between children who did chores because they were forced to and children who participated, because they were genuinely invited into the life of the household. The difference is enormous. A child who is assigned tasks with a chore chart and a system of rewards and punishments does not build the same identity as a child who is told, "We need your help. This is something we do together." This is the second shift. The first shift is moving from no to yes. The second shift is moving from chores to contribution. A chore is something you do because someone tells you to. Contribution is something you do because you belong. The external structure looks similar. The child is wiping the table either way, but the internal experience is entirely different. One builds obligation, the other builds identity. Consider one more piece of research before we turn to the practical framework. Dr. Joan Grusek, a developmental psychologist at the University of Toronto, has spent decades studying what makes children internalize values rather than simply complying with demands. Her research points to something she calls autonomy-supportive parenting, a style in which the parent communicates expectations not as commands, but as invitations to participate in a shared project. In one of Grusek's key studies, she observed mothers interacting with their toddlers during a cleanup task. Some mothers used direct commands, "Put the blocks away now." Others framed the task as a shared activity. "Let's put the blocks away together. Can you help me?" The difference in compliance was immediate and dramatic. Children in the second group helped more readily, but Grusek followed up with these same children years later. The children whose mothers had used the participatory framing were not just more compliant in the moment. They had internalized the value of helping at a deeper level. As older children, they helped around the house more willingly, without being asked, not because they had been trained to comply with commands, but because they had come to see contribution as part of who they were. This is neuroscience and psychology converging on the same truth. The child's developing brain is building a self-concept, a mental model of who I am, and every interaction with a parent is a brick in that. Construction. When you say no, I'll do it, the brick says you are not competent. When you say yes, help me, the brick says you are a contributor. The bricks add up. By the time a child is 7 or 8, the self-concept is largely formed. And if the self-concept says, I don't help, reversing it is not about finding the right chore chart. It is about rebuilding identity. Now let me tell you about a mother in Stockholm. Her name is Anna. She has 2 children, aged 4 and 6. Her kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon looks very much like yours. Flour, egg, chaos. But when her 4-year-old drags a chair to the counter and reaches for the whisk, Anna does something that would make most Western parents flinch. She says yes. She takes a breath. She moves the egg bowl to a safer position. She puts her hand over his small hand on the whisk and guides it, slowly, spilling as much batter on the counter as stays in the bowl. The cake that emerges from the oven 40 minutes later is lopsided and slightly too brown on one side. But her son eats 2 slices at dinner and tells his father, without prompting, I made this cake. What happened in that kitchen was not about a cake. It was about a child learning that his hands could make something, that he belonged to a family not just as a recipient of care, but as a participant in the work of the household, that when he reached for the whisk, the answer was yes. Not every time, not unlimited, but enough times that the accumulating weight of those yeses built an identity. This brings us to the practical framework. If you are a parent who hears yourself in this and feels a knot of guilt tightening in your stomach, I want you to release it, right now. That guilt is not useful. You are not a bad parent. You said no because you were tired and overwhelmed and the kitchen was already a mess and you just needed to get the cake in the oven before the baby woke up. I understand that. Every parent does. The question is not whether you have made this mistake. The question is what you do now that you know. 3 practical shifts. Write these down. Shift 1. Catch the reaching. For the next week, your only job is to notice. When your child reaches for the broom, the whisk, the laundry basket, the watering can, the dish sponge, notice it. You do not have to say yes yet. Just notice how often it happens. Notice the look on your child's face. Notice the impulse that rises in you. The impulse to say no, let me do it. Just become aware of the pattern. Most parents are stunned by how often their child is reaching out to help and how automatically they shut it down. You cannot change what you do not see. Shift 2. Say yes to the mess. This is the hard one. Saying yes to your child's help means saying yes to flour on the floor, yes to water splashed across the bathroom tiles, yes to a task that would take you 3 minutes taking 15 instead. It means redefining what success looks like. Success is not a clean kitchen. Success is a child who puts herself to bed that night with the quiet knowledge that she helped mommy. The mess is temporary. The identity is permanent. Shift 3. Change the language. Swap, can you help me? For I need your help. Those 3 words, I need your help, are among the most powerful words you can say to a child. They communicate that the child's contribution is not an optional favor, but a genuine necessity. They transform the child from assistant to partner. Try it tomorrow. When you are emptying the dishwasher, do not say, can you put the spoons away? Say, I need your help with the spoons. Watch the difference in the child's face, and do not tie this to rewards. No sticker charts, no pocket money per task. No, if you help mommy clean up, you can have a biscuit. Remember Warneken and Tomasello. Remember the overjustification effect. The child who helps for a biscuit stops helping when the biscuit is not offered. The child who helps, because helping is what their family does together, keeps helping for life. Now let me ask you the question that sits at the heart of all of this. What identity did you accidentally build in your child, not through what you said, but through what you stopped them from doing? That question is heavy. I know it is. But the beautiful thing about identity is that it is not fixed. The same neuroscience that explains how helping behavior gets extinguished also explains how it can be rebuilt. Every time you say yes, your child's brain updates the self-concept by a fraction. Every time you say, "I need your help," a new brick is laid. Over weeks and months and years, the identity shifts. The child who learned "I am not a helper" can learn "I am a contributor," not through words, not through lectures, not through chore charts and consequences, but through the accumulated weight of small yeses. This is not permissive parenting. You are not saying yes to everything. You are saying yes to contribution. The child who wants to stick a fork in the toaster still gets told no, firmly and immediately. The child who wants to help empty the dishwasher does not. The distinction is not between yes and no. The distinction is between safety and opportunity. Safety is non-negotiable. Opportunity is what wise parents leave the door open for. Let me take you back to a kitchen in Stockholm, to a mother named Anna and a lopsided cake. 2 years after that Tuesday afternoon, Anna's son is 6 years old. He sets the table for dinner without being asked. He picks up his younger sister's toys when she forgets. He is not a perfect child. No child is, but something has settled into his bones. He belongs to this family not as a guest who receives service, but as a member who contributes to the functioning of the home. The bond is bigger than the behavior. The work of parenting is not to control what your child does. The work of parenting is to shape who your child believes they are, and the most powerful tool you have is not a chore chart. It is not a reward system. It is not a consequence. It is one word, offered generously, to a small pair of hands reaching up toward the whisk. Yes, I want to hear from you now. When was the last time your child tried to help and you said no, automatically, without thinking? What were they reaching for? And if you try saying yes this week, tell me what happened. I read every single comment in the first 24 hours.